Silk Road Flourishes, 2nd century BCE, 15th century CE, expanding international trade. Introduction, the birth of the Silk Road. The Silk Road, a network of trade routes connecting the east to the west, flourished between the 2nd century BCE and the 15th century CE. It was not a single road, but a sprawling web of interconnected trade routes that spanned across Asia, the Middle East, and Europe, facilitating the exchange of goods, ideas, and cultures. The Silk Road revolutionized international trade, shaping the development of civilizations across the world. It linked the Chinese Empire with Central Asia, the Indian subcontinent, the Roman Empire, and beyond, creating an unparalleled cultural and economic exchange that lasted for over a millennium. 1. Early development, from China to Central Asia, 2nd century BCE. The origins of the Silk Road. The Silk Road began to take shape during the Han Dynasty in China around the 2nd century BCE, when Emperor Wu of Han established diplomatic and military ties with the Xiongnu tribes in the Central Asian steppes. The Han Dynasty sought to expand its trade networks beyond its borders, particularly to the west, in search of new markets and resources. One of the primary commodities China sought to trade was silk, which was highly prized in the West. Silk, known as the golden thread, became a symbol of luxury, and as a result, the Chinese began exporting it along the emerging trade routes. Over time, these routes expanded to connect with regions as far as the Roman Empire, the Persian Empire, and India. The role of Central Asia. Central Asia, with its nomadic tribes and vast steppes, played a crucial role as the intermediary region along the Silk Road. It was here that goods from the east met those from the west, and caravanserais, rest stops, were established to facilitate trade. The Parthian Empire, located in Persia, modern-day Iran, became a central hub for Silk Road trade, serving as a middleman between China and Rome. Persian merchants helped move goods along the routes from China to India, the Arabian Peninsula, and eventually to Europe. 2. The peak of Silk Road trade, 1st century CE, 7th century CE. Expanding trade networks. By the 1st century CE, the Silk Road had become a flourishing trade network, connecting multiple powerful civilizations. In the West, Roman merchants sought valuable goods such as silk, spices, precious metals, and gemstones, while the East looked for horses, glassware, wine, and gold. Goods from all parts of the world moved along these routes, carried by caravan traders, maritime merchants, and diplomats. Silk was the most coveted commodity, reaching as far as the Roman Empire and eventually into Europe. Spices, including pepper and cinnamon, were traded from India and Southeast Asia, becoming highly sought after in Roman kitchens. Glassware, ceramics, and fine fabrics from the Roman Empire traveled eastward, influencing art and culture in China and Central Asia. The spread of ideas and culture. The Silk Road was not only a conduit for material goods, but also a channel for cultural exchange. As merchants and travelers moved along the routes, they spread religions, technologies, and ideas. Buddhism traveled from India to China, where it gradually became a major religion. Islam spread along the trade routes, influencing areas from Central Asia to South Asia. Christianity, particularly through Byzantine and Roman influences, spread along the western segments of the route. Additionally, scientific knowledge, including mathematics, astronomy, and medicine, was exchanged between civilizations along the Silk Road, enriching the intellectual development of both the East and the West. 3. The role of the Mongol Empire, 13th century CE. The Mongol Empire's expansion. In the 13th century, the rise of the Mongol Empire under Genghis Khan and his successors marked a new era for the Silk Road. The Mongols established one of the largest contiguous empires in history, stretching from the east to the west, covering much of Central Asia, China, and even reaching into Eastern Europe. Under Kublai Khan, the grandson of Genghis Khan, the Mongol Empire's dominance over the Silk Road routes facilitated safe passage for merchants, leading to a renewed period of trade and cultural exchange. Silk Road merchants now had protection and security, which encouraged increased commerce along these routes. Pax Mongolica, Mongol peace, was established, a period of stability that allowed caravans to travel safely across vast territories. The golden age of trade. During the Mongol Empire, trade along the Silk Road reached unprecedented levels. Goods, including silk, spices, precious metals, and ivory, moved freely across the empire, reaching parts of Europe, the Middle East, and China. Not only material goods, but also technologies like gunpowder, papermaking, and printing spread across Asia and Europe during this time. The Mongol influence on trade extended to maritime routes as well, enhancing connectivity between China, India, the Arabian Peninsula, and East Africa. 4. Decline of the Silk Road, 15th century CE. The rise of maritime trade. By the 15th century, the decline of the Silk Road began. Several factors contributed to this change. Increased maritime trade became more efficient and safer with the development of naval technology. European explorers, such as Christopher Columbus and Vasco da Gama, found sea routes to Asia, bypassing the land-based Silk Road. The Ottoman Empire and Mongol decline disrupted trade routes in Central Asia, reducing the stability and security of land-based trade. The fall of the Mongol Empire. The Mongol Empire fractured into multiple smaller states after the 14th century, weakening the unity that had allowed for the flourishing of Silk Road trade. The Black Death, which spread along trade routes, also devastated populations and disrupted trade networks. As the Ottoman Empire rose to power, it controlled critical regions along the Silk Road, but its focus shifted toward Mediterranean trade, further diminishing the role of the ancient overland routes. 5. Legacy of the Silk Road. Cultural and economic impact. Despite its decline in the 15th century, the legacy of the Silk Road has had an enduring impact on the development of global trade and culture. Cultural exchange. The Silk Road facilitated the exchange of art, religion, language, and cultural practices, creating a deeply interconnected world. Economic influence. The Silk Road's legacy lives on in modern trade routes that continue to link East and West. The rise of global commerce, including modern initiatives like the Belt and Road Initiative, echoes the spirit of the ancient trade network. The Silk Road in modern memory. Today, the Silk Road is remembered as a symbol of cross-cultural exchange, bringing together people from diverse cultures, religions, and regions. Museums, academic studies, and modern infrastructure projects celebrate its rich history, preserving its impact on the development of human civilization. The Silk Road's enduring influence. The Silk Road was more than just a series of trade routes. It was a vibrant, interconnected network that transformed economies, cultures, and societies for over a millennium. From the 2nd century BCE to the 15th century CE, the Silk Road enabled East-West trade, fostered cultural exchanges, and paved the way for the globalized world we know today. Though the physical routes may have faded, the legacy of the Silk Road continues to shape global commerce, cultural understanding, and international relations in the modern era. Collapse of the Western Roman Empire, 476 CE, disrupting European trade and economy. Introduction: the fall of an empire. The collapse of the Western Roman Empire in 476 CE marked one of the most pivotal moments in European history, signaling the end of ancient Rome's dominance and the beginning of the medieval period. This event, often viewed as the final blow to centuries of Roman power, brought with it a drastic disruption in trade, economy, and social structures across Europe. The once mighty empire, which had controlled vast territories from Britain to the Mediterranean and North Africa, crumbled under the weight of internal and external pressures, setting the stage for the profound changes that would follow. 1. The decline of the Roman Empire, 4th and 5th century CE. Political instability and internal strife. By the 4th century CE, the Roman Empire had become increasingly difficult to manage. Divided into the Eastern and Western Roman empires, the Western portion faced more severe internal challenges. Political instability plagued the empire, with frequent changes in leadership and civil wars. The Roman Senate and imperial institutions lost their power, and military leaders gained more control, often acting in their own interests rather than those of the state. Economic strain and taxation issues. The empire's economy faced significant challenges in the 5th century CE. Inflation, high taxes, and corruption undermined its stability. Additionally, the Roman economy relied heavily on slave labor, which became unsustainable as the empire expanded. Trade, particularly in the Mediterranean, began to suffer due to A decline in infrastructure, such as roads and ports, that were essential for commerce. Devaluation of currency, making it harder for merchants to conduct business. Military decline and barbarian invasions. In the face of increasing barbarian invasions, the Roman military found itself stretched thin. Gothic, Vandal, Huns, and other tribes began to pressure the empire's borders. By the 5th century, the Western Roman Empire was struggling to defend its borders. The Roman military, which had once been the backbone of the empire, was now weakened by internal issues, including a reliance on mercenary forces, non-Roman soldiers, who lacked loyalty to the empire. Invasions by various Germanic tribes, e.g., the Visigoths, Ostrogoths, and Vandals, and the Huns, led by Attila. 2. The fall of the Western Roman Empire, 476 CE. The last Roman emperor, Romulus Augustulus. The final blow to the Western Roman Empire came in 476 CE, when the last Roman emperor, Romulus Augustulus, was deposed by the Germanic chieftain Odoacer. While the title of emperor still existed in the Eastern Roman Empire, Byzantine Empire, the western half of the empire had essentially crumbled under the weight of barbarian invasions, internal political chaos, economic collapse. Romulus Augustulus, a young and ineffective ruler, was the last figurehead of a once powerful empire. When Odoacer deposed him and declared himself king of Italy, the Western Roman Empire was officially ended, marking the transition to the Middle Ages. 3. Disruption of trade and the European economy. Collapse of Roman infrastructure. With the fall of the Western Roman Empire, the infrastructure that supported European trade and commerce, including roads, ports, and cities, rapidly deteriorated. Trade routes that had connected the empire's vast territories were disrupted, leading to decline in long-distance trade. The Mediterranean, once a bustling trade center, became more isolated. Goods like wine, olive oil, grain, and luxury items were no longer being transported across the empire's former territories. A loss of urban centers, as Roman cities fell into disrepair. Trade hubs such as Rome, Carthage, and Alexandria lost their influence, reducing the efficiency of commerce in Europe. Shift from a unified economy to fragmentation. Under Roman rule, a unified economic system allowed for the free movement of goods, services, and resources. But the collapse of the empire fragmented Europe into smaller kingdoms and territories, each with their own local economies. This shift led to decline of monetary systems. The Roman currency became obsolete, and the use of gold and silver coins disappeared in many regions. Barter systems began to replace cash transactions. Disintegration of commercial networks. Local economies became more self-sufficient, and long-distance trade was limited to only a few regions. European economies retreated into feudalism, where land and agricultural output became the primary economic focus. 4. The rise of feudalism in Europe. The rise of local power structures. In the aftermath of the collapse, Europe saw the rise of feudalism, a decentralized system in which power and resources were controlled by local lords and barons. As the central authority of the Roman Empire faded, smaller territories began to operate independently, with their own local economies and military forces. Key elements of feudalism included manorialism. The system of managing land for agricultural production became central to the economy. Peasant labor. Serfs and peasants worked the land, providing the necessary labor to sustain local economies. Decline in urbanization. As feudalism took hold, many Roman cities that once served as bustling centers of trade began to decline. The economic focus shifted from urban markets to agricultural production. Over time, many people left the cities, and urbanization in Europe saw a dramatic decline during the early Middle Ages. 5. Long-term effects on European trade and economy. The slow recovery of trade. While the collapse of the Western Roman Empire led to a dramatic economic downturn, trade did not cease altogether. It was significantly reduced, but eventually revived through the Byzantine Empire. The Eastern Roman Empire, Byzantium, continued to thrive and act as a conduit for trade between Europe and Asia. The Islamic Caliphates, during the 8th and 9th centuries, the rise of Islamic empires, and their extensive trade networks helped to re-establish some cross-cultural and cross-continental trade, particularly with the Middle East and North Africa. The beginning of a new era. The fall of the Western Roman Empire paved the way for the Middle Ages, where trade became increasingly localized, but also began to shift toward the development of a feudal economy. The Silk Road, and later the Viking routes, would help stimulate limited trade with Asia and the Arab world, eventually setting the stage for the rise of the Renaissance and the Age of Exploration. The end of an era. The collapse of the Western Roman Empire in 476 CE marked the end of one of the most powerful civilizations in history, and it triggered a massive disruption in European trade and economy. As the empire crumbled, so did its systems of commerce, governance, and social organization, leading to a more fragmented, localized economy based on feudalism. While trade and prosperity did not immediately recover, the fall of Rome set the stage for new political, cultural, and economic systems to emerge, eventually leading to the medieval era and the Renaissance. The lasting legacy of the Western Roman Empire, however, can still be seen in the structures and institutions that arose in the centuries that followed.